After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese were victorious in their endeavor to control as much of the western Pacific area and Southeast Asia as possible. They met little effective resistance as they seized islands from Wake to the Philippines. For 6 months, the Japanese were unstoppable until the Coral Sea. Although tactically a draw, the battle proved a strategic defeat for Japan. It stopped the imperial juggernaut. The Japanese began planning for a decisive battle in the vicinity of Midway shortly after the Doolittle raid on Tokyo in April. The Coral Sea operation was actually an integral part of the overall strategic plan that was to bring about this decisive battle. The intention was to smash the remnants of American naval power in the Pacific. They also hoped to advance Japan's outer defensive perimeter more than 1,000 miles farther by seizing the western Aleutians, Midway Island, and ultimately Fiji, Samoa, and New Caledonia. Like the Pearl Harbor operation, the Midway operation was the brainchild of Isoroku Yamamoto. But it was neither as well planned nor as well executed. The end result was the greatest concentration of naval tonnage since the British battle fleet at Jutland in World War I. It was the biggest and the most powerful seagoing force in all history. For Nimitz to think in terms of setting a trap for this most modern of the world's navies was, on the surface, impertinent. But that is what he was about to do. Sinking America's aircraft carriers and seizing Midway was seen as the only means of nullifying the threat of another Doolittle-type raid on the home islands. Typical of Japanese naval plans during the war, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's battle plan was quite complex. Additionally, his designs were predicated on optimistic intelligence information that suggested that Enterprise and Hornet were the only carriers available to the U.S. Pacific forces at the time. At the Battle of the Coral Sea, Lexington had been sunk, and Yorktown was severely mauled and believed sunk. The Japanese were aware that Saratoga was undergoing repairs on the west coast after taking torpedo damage from a submarine. Therefore, the Japanese High Command believed they faced at most 2 American fleet carriers in the Pacific. Yorktown, the nucleus of Rear Admiral Frank Fletcher's Task Force 17, was diagnosed as needing 3 weeks for repairs. In order to do battle with an enemy force anticipated to be composed of 4 or 5 carriers, Nimitz needed every available U.S. flight deck. The Yorktown was back at sea in 3 days, thanks to Herculean dockyard labor at Pearl, inspired by the frequent presence of Nimitz himself. He also had Vice Admiral William Halsey's 2-carrier task force at hand. However, Halsey himself was stricken with severe dermatitis. Halsey was obliged to relinquish the seagoing command to Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance. Saratoga was still under repair on the west coast and was ordered to put to sea as soon as possible. Task Force 17 was protected by 2 cruisers and 6 destroyers, Task Force 16 by 6 and 9, respectively. For the first and only time in the war, United States submarines were assigned a defensive role. 12 of the fleet subs were ordered to screen Midway, 4 Oahu, and 3 others were on call. On Midway Island, Nimitz could call upon 32 naval Catalina flying boats and 6 torpedo bombers, plus 27 fighters and 27 dive bombers of the 2nd Marine Air Wing.
The scene, of course, on Eastern Island was swarming with aircraft. There were course, the Marine Corps SB-2Us, the old Vindicator, a few SBD-5s, which were the Douglas Dauntless airplanes, a lot of FM-2s, the Brewster Buffalo, and I think a handful of F-4F Grumman Wildcats. And then a lot of B-17s in and out all the time. Over on Sand Island, which is the seaplane base, a lot of Catalinas, the PBYs, flying in and out. Actually, a few Catalinas were landing on Eastern because they were the PBY 5A that had both landing gear and could land in the water. And then there were 4 Army Air Corps B-26s, which had been configured to carry torpedoes, and then our 6 Grumman TBF-1s.
The Atoll, America's immovable but unsinkable 4th aircraft carrier for the coming battle. Spruance assembled the 3 mobile flat tops with their escorts some 325 miles northeast of the island on June 1st. Task Force 16 left Pearl on May 28th, and Fletcher 2 days later with the patched-up Yorktown. The trap was set.